Hi, I'm RobotX and I'm gonna show you in this video how to assemble the µBotino robot controller. Okay, let's begin. When you get the µBotino kit, you will get a package just like this. First thing you need to do is open up and get your parts out of the bag. You will need to organize a little bit and figure out, get all the small parts which will be assembled first. We will start with the capacitors. So first we need to separate all the capacitors and put them in the order. Okay, we have three sizes capacitors. We have the big size, which they will be installed almost at the end. We have a little bit smaller capacitors, and we have the ceramic capacitors. We're gonna start first with the ceramic capacitors. Okay, so let's start with ceramic capacitors. The ceramic capacitors have a marking of 104. That means 10 followed by 4 zeros, and it's in picofarads. So 10 followed by 4 zeros means 100,000 picofarads, or 100 nanofarads, or 0.1 microfarads. So these capacitors are not polarized, so you can insert them any way you like. Wherever you see a marking on the board of 0.1 U being micro. Okay, where else we have here? These capacitors are filtering capacitors. Yes, I missed one, of course. Okay, now that I have them all on, okay, bend the leads outwards a little bit, like this. Okay, so you will end up with the parts just like this. Okay, set the board on the table and start soldering. Make sure you wet your sponge or your preferred method of cleaning the tip. Then grab some solder, and I prefer to do it this way. I set the tip both on the pad and on the lead, and I put just a little bit of solder over there. Now when you solder the pin that's on the ground plane, you'll have some trouble doing that, because the ground plane likes to spread the heat, acts like a heat sink. So it takes some time to heat that pad. Okay. After inspecting, they look good enough. Now look at the parts. they're pretty straight. They look okay. Now, using a diagonal cutter, cut all the leads. Hold them with your finger, otherwise they will jump. And they might jump in your eyes. I wear glasses, so I'm protected. I don't need to wear any goggles, but if you don't wear glasses, you better wear your goggles. Okay, now all the cuts to the side with crystal. So place the crystal in place, turn it upside down. Actually, I think the crystal should be the first one to go in because it's the tiniest. Okay, cut the lid. Okay, 1, 2, good. The blue capacitors. The blue capacitors have a marking of 22J. That means 22 picofarads. These capacitors are needed because the crystal needs the capacitor to oscillate. It cannot go on by itself. Bend the leads, put it upside down and start soldering. Okay, cut the leads. Good. Now we have all these parts soldered. Good. Next, we'll have to solder the sockets. First of all, take them out from the foam, and I'm going to use a tiny screwdriver. Insert it in one side, then the other side, and the 8 bridge came out. Then do the same thing for the microcontroller. One side, okay, a little bit on the other side, and it's out. Place it back in the static foam. Okay, now we are ready to solder the sockets. The 28-pin socket has a little notch right here, and the notch goes on the board right there. This one has retaining pins, so when you plug it in, it doesn't fall. The other socket, the 16-pin socket, does not have retaining. Also same thing, see the notch? The notch goes towards the crystal. Okay, but this one will fall down if we don't see, it moves, it falls down. So I bend one pin in one corner, bend another pin in the opposite corner, just a tiny bit. Okay, now it will not fall again, see? Okay, set it on the table. Okay, make sure it stays good, and start soldering the pins. Okay, so I'm soldering the last pin. Alright, one last visual inspection. Looks like again, on the ground plane there is a lot of heat sinking, so the solder doesn't look very nice, so, but a little bit of straightening and it's all fine. Okay, let's see what's next. Next is reset button. Reset button, there it is. The small button with a white thing on top. Just insert it in the corner of the board. Press it until it goes in completely. Also the leads are retaining, so you don't have to do anything else. Just set it on the table and solder it. Okay, reset is done. Then I would like to do the LEDs and the resistors. Okay, now there is one problem with these resistors. One of them is 10 kilo ohms and the other two are 1 kilo ohm. The difference between them is the 10 kilo ohm resistor should have an orange line and the other two should have a red line. So you gotta look very it's not focusing good enough, very carefully and pick out the lightest red line, which is going to be the 10 kilo ohm resistor. Okay, this is the one. To make sure, I'm gonna use my digital multimeter. Put it on the table, set it on 20 kilo ohms, turn it on. Let me put it somewhere so you can actually see something on it. Like that. Okay, then use the leads to measure the resistance. See, it's 9.94, so it's close enough to 10 kilo ohms. This is going to be the reset resistor. Okay. Bend one lead over the resistor to make it like this. Okay, insert it near the reset button. There is a mark saying 10K. That's where the resistor goes. Okay, bend leads. Good. Next, two resistors. Bend one lead over like that. Insert it in a place near the LED where it says 1K. Okay, bend the leads. Next, same thing, one lead over, doesn't matter which one because they're not polarized. Insert it in near the capacitors, between the one of the big capacitor and the LED. Okay, bend the lead. Okay, set it down on the table. Alright, and third resistor. They came out pretty good. We don't need to do much straightening over there. Okay, cut the leads. Always hold the leads with your hand because they can jump all over the place they get on the floor, then you step on them, they get in your socks, and you don't really want that. Okay, now the LEDs. Red LED is for signal. The LED has a flat side, and if you look at the pins, the flat side is right on the shortest pin. That is the negative pin and goes toward the top of the board. The red LED is for D13 LED, so you insert it right under the power plug. The green LED, same thing, with the shortest pin, which is the negative, is the cathode. You will insert it where it says power LED. Okay, turn it upside down. Make sure they're pretty much straight, then start soldering. Okay, solder first the lead that is the longest, which is the positive lead, because it's easier to solder. Then lift up the board, look at the LEDs, make sure they're nice and straight. Then if they're straight, you can continue and solder the shortest pin, which goes to the ground plane, and it's harder to solder. Okay, cut the leads. Okay, so we're done this far. What is next? Power switch. Power switch goes on the top. Put it upside down. Make sure it's straight and start soldering. Make sure you don't burn your fingers. I've developed great control over the years, and I rarely burn myself, but sometimes things happen. Now see, it's a little bit crooked, so I am going to reflow the solder. Okay, now looks better. Good. Okay, we're done with all these components. Now we have to start with the pins. Okay, let's get 3 groups of 6 pins, right? Insert them where the sensors are supposed to go. 1, 2, and 3. Now, use your anti-static foam like this. Press it on the pins. Okay, this will keep them in place and straight, so you can turn the board upside down, set it on the table, and can start soldering the pins. So the 1 pin on each row. Okay, and last one. Okay, then look at them to see if they're straight or they're crooked or whatever. which I see they are. Then reflow. Make sure you don't touch the pin that you reflow. Okay. Make sure they're all nice and straight. There is only one pin that I really don't like how it looks like. Okay, now it's much better. Since they're already in place and they don't move, we don't need the anti-static again, the foam, so we can start actually soldering all the pins. Okay, first group of pins done. Next, get one piece of 6 pins, insert it right here, then 2 groups of 5 pins. Why is one group of 5 and 6 and 2 group of 5 pins? Because if you look closely on the board, you see a ground pin right next to the RX and TX. That means you can use a 3-pin sensor, a 3-pin connector to connect with a serial device that uses just ground, RX and TX. If you need to use 4 pins and you need to use power, also, it's easier to use 2 groups of 2 pins, one inserted to RX and TX, and the other group of 2 pins inserted into the power and ground, which is the right next pins right there. Okay, so we have the pins in place. Again, use the static foam. Press it gently until they are straight, turn it upside down, okay, hold it in place and solder 1 pin on each row. Okay, remove the foam and look at the pins, make sure they're all straight and nice, and one of the rows I think it's just a tiny bit. Okay, now it looks straight. Good. Put it back down and start soldering each pin. Okay, we're done with the second group of header pins. Let's get the motor header pins in. Locate 2 groups of 2 pins. Plug them in. Use the foam to keep them in place. Okay, put it on the table and solder. Okay, that was quick. Now if these are not perfectly aligned, it doesn't really matter, because it's easy to just plug in the connectors on them. Okay, next, locate 3 groups of 5 pins. Plug them right there where the servos will be plugged. Use the foam again. Make sure they are straight when you press down the foam on them. Okay, now we have to hold them in place perfectly. So there's one pin for each group. Okay, remove the foam and check if they are straight. Okay, it seems like they are. Turn the board upside down again and start soldering all the pins. Okay, done with these connectors too. Locate two 3-pin connectors. Plug them in the corner. Again, use the foam. Okay, let's try it this way. These connectors are for the hardware programmer. We use these connectors to in case we need to reprogram the bootloader on the microcontroller, or in case you're not happy with a bootloader, you don't have enough space for your code, so you can use a hardware programmer to remove the bootloader and load more code in your microcontroller. Okay, next one, 3-pin header for the jumper from the voltage selector. Okay, good. Set it down. Make sure it stays, all the pins come out equally. So the one pin again, take a look, see if it's straight, and put it back down. Solder the rest of the pins. Okay, good. The other two jumpers, okay, maybe use the foam like this, insert the foam, turn it upside down, solder one of them, okay, remove the foam, see if they're straight. They look pretty good. Okay, now the last one is the FTDI connector. You can use a straight regular connector, or you can use a keyed connector, which looks just like this one, but it's a little bit wider. If you're using the keyed connector, just plug it in something like this. Of course, it's gonna be a wider connector, but just make sure you plug it in like this. Okay, so use the regular connector, put it in, use the foam to keep it in place, turn the board upside down, Okay, so the one pin. Okay, remove the foam, see if they're straight. Looks like they're not. Okay, now they're good. Okay, we're done with the connectors. Now, the 10 microfarad capacitors. Now, these capacitors have a minus sign on the shortest pin. This is the negative pin. Then the longest pin is the positive pin. Same thing like for the LEDs. The short pin is the negative, the long pin is the positive. On this board, the short pin is marked with a minus sign. So make sure you plug the short pin where the minus sign is, right under the hole. Plug it in, press it all the way down. Next capacitor, same thing. Make sure you plug it in correctly. Third capacitor. Okay, turn them upside down. Bend the leads, set it down, then you can start soldering. Okay, got the leads. The big capacitors. Big capacitors, same thing. Minus sign on the short pin. The long pin is the positive. On the board, the negative pin is marked with a minus sign. Okay, just make sure you insert them correctly. They will go negative pin to negative pin, back to back. Okay, you can hold on to the leads, put them down on the table. Okay, start soldering. Solder one pin first, the square pin, which is the positive. Now we can solder the other two pins. Okay, cut the leads. Power connector. Power connector, you can see on the board, on the marking, there is a little square towards the LED. That's where the key goes. So you insert the power connector with the key towards the LED. Alright. Oops. Hold down. Set it on the table. Solder one pin, the square pin. Then look at it, make sure it's straight. Then solder the other pin. Alright. And the last one is the voltage regulator. The voltage on the board, you will see a black line towards the top of the board. Yeah, that's where the metal side of the voltage regulator go. So insert it right there. Place the board on the table. Okay, hold it. Oops. Solder one pin. Make sure it looks nice and straight. Then solder the other two pins. The middle pin is the negative pin, and it's connected again to the ground plane, so it's a little bit harder to make a nice solder cone. Okay, we are all done here. Okay, so the board is now all soldered. Now insert the H-bridge with a notch towards the blue capacitors. Press it down hard. Insert the microcontroller with a notch towards the left side of the board. Okay. Then insert the jumpers. If you are using servos, you can set the voltage. The middle pin is the positive, the voltage that goes to the middle pin of the servo connectors. If you are using servos, you want to connect it to the V in, which means voltage in. Okay. Then the other two jumpers, if they are in place, everything works. If you remove the one towards the LED will not blink, will not work. If you remove J2, which is jumper 2, the motors will not get power. Alright, so the board is all assembled. The only thing that's left is the power connector, which you can crimp directly on the battery box leads. So just put it like that, crimp it, then insert it in the housing like this here. Then you can plug it in your board and it all works. Alright, so in the next video I'm gonna show you how to make a start here robot using the µBotino controller and of course GM9 motors and wheels and sharp IR sensor and one of those small where is it? One of the small HXT 900 servos.